All right, well let's get into it because I mean, come on,
I'm
you know where we have to start, Anika. I mean, usually, especially when it comes to these rather fiery exits, a lot of people tell me that they honestly don't remember it, that you
no.
see red, then you black out. So yeah, it sounds like that was the case. So then, talk to me at least from your perspective, what you remember going through your head as, especially it seemed like once that second vote for you came up, like you knew
Yeah.
something was amiss.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know that my name was written down in the first tribal council. And what wasn't shown is that Sam actually told me before that first tribal council, Andy is throwing your name out. So I had a little bit of previous knowledge that, like, okay, I might see my name. So that first tribal council, when my name comes down, I'm cool as a cucumber. It doesn't bother me
Mm.
at all in the slightest because I feel really solid with my alliance. The fact that Sam even trusted me to tell me this information, we're building alliance here. And so when I first see my name again, I'm like, Andy's writing my name down. Bummer. However, when I see that second name written down, you see it on my face. Pure shock. Pure shock. Yeah, and I mean the rest you guys saw, but I really did black out. I don't remember any of it. The long stare, I that it could have been a second for me. I'm watching it back, being like, wow, what was going on through my head at that moment? Um, and then immediately, like the moment I walk out, you just see like it all crashes down on me, and I feel it immediately.
Yeah, so I mean, on that note, was there anything that you looked back on either in that moment or now that were sort of those seeds in retrospect that like grew until this unfortunate blindside plant? It seemed like you were incredibly confident that afternoon, but in retrospect, was there anything that you were realizing specifically like Sierra and Sam are not on my side here?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, like they did a great job of blindsiding me. Like they really kept it quiet. And me and Rachel, like, were not in the know. Sierra would come to us all the time, and it was almost like a beggy, like, are we good? Are we fine? Like, please, please comfort me in our girls' alliance. And we would always be like, and she would get us to say, yeah. And I do believe that was genuine. Like, I think she was still going through the motions of what was best for her game. And she was using that to make sure that we were still locked in with her, which we were. And as far as Sam goes too, like he also would equally talk about, and we see it in his confessionals too, about how annoying Andy is and how he performed in challenges and how it hurts him and things he would do at camp life. So I was made to believe, that it was Andy going home instead of me. I really truly and we know that Andy didn't know about the idol. I also informed was out there that everyone knew about the idol except for Andy, and so yeah, it's just very interesting to me because Andy is almost a number to them and not an alliance member, and I felt like an alliance member to them.
Yeah, so on that note, talk to me about your perspective on like how the breadwinners broke down because at least from our perspective, it really did seem like, while it was the three of you, it was you and Rachel and then like Sierra had her thing with Sam. Was that your perspective as well? And talk to me about how you work together as a trio.
Yeah, Rachel is obviously my number one. So no matter what out there, we tried. We try. It's funny looking back now because we tried so hard not to make it as obvious that we were number ones with each other. We have the same hairdo in every single challenge. We're doing the puzzles together. I'm like, what were you thinking, Annika? So obviously you guys were number ones. Um, but out there, we were like, we don't want to talk to each other. We want to make seem too close. So a lot of the time, I was spending talking to Sam and Sierra. Me and Sam's relationship, we're running the challenges together. We're finding the idols together. We're the ones talking to each other each time. And when we do bicker, in my head, it was very brother sister.
Mm.
As far as the breadwinners alliance goes, it was built essentially because the women were owning everything at camp. Like Sierra was making the fire, I was doing the food, Rachel was cleaning up the camp. Like we were literally doing everything as Andy and Sam were sitting. And so it was naturally built that all of us were bonded over literally running the camp and keeping it alive. And then also just again, we're all strong, powerful women that we wanted to work together with each other.
Yeah, so you mentioned, running the camp and you helped run that first vote as well, even though you did get one. So I'm intrigued from your perspective because I know talking with John, he had felt like once Andy had that meltdown, the die had been cast. We see from our perspective that it was like, him being uncomfortable with his name being used as a decoy. So talk to me about your perspective that at that first vote led it to be John instead of Andy.
John and I, day one, had a conversation. This wasn't shown. So my whole entire relationship, I actually think, wasn't shown. John comes to me. I want to work with you. You're someone smart. I want to keep people smart in the game. Like, let's go. And I'm like, I'm so down. I love this. This is great. However, there was a very kumbaya-esque vibe to our tribe. And so you didn't get a lot of one-on-one time with each other. Within those next 2 days, me and John weren't able to re-solidify our connection one-on-one to say, hey, we're good. Night two, it's Sierra, Rachel, Andy, and John, and they're all talking by the campfire. And John proposes the four of them to work together. At this point, Rachel is already my number one. Rachel comes to me in the morning and says, hey, by the way, John is proposing this. And immediately in my head, red flags spark. And I'm like, hey, this is not an alliance member I want if he's not as strong with me or if he's trying to work with other people. I don't think necessarily he was playing his game too much at that point, too. I think he was just trying to see what was sticking, and me and him hadn't had that time to work together. And you'll see, I'm trying to fight to keep him because I do think he would be a great shield for me in my game. Even though I was able to get won over by the rest of my core four because he was being a little bit sketchy. He wasn't as like, I want to work with you as much because there was another moment that wasn't shown. Me and Rachel are dead set in the middle within those first couple of days. And we talk to each other and say, we get to go with Andy and John, or we get to go in Sam and Sierra, and we get to choose who we want to work with. And a huge part of the reason of why we didn't choose John and Andy is because of Andy's meltdown. So Andy's meltdown does play a part in it.
Okay.
That Rachel was very turned off by wanting to work with them. And also John as well. The whole wanting to keep the tribe strong thing, I think that was just a front. I don't believe that Sam personally saw an alliance member in John. And so that is a reason why he wanted to get him out.
You and I talked in the preseason about how you're used to calling the shots. It's that project management skills. And, you hit the beach and it just seemed, natural for you. Talk to me about that. Was that the case? And how do you look back on that? Because, yes, you did run the camp, but then we also see, the tension could be cut with Sam like a nice piece of clothesline.
Good one. Yeah, I mean, I told myself coming out here, I've seen so many Survivor seasons in which the leader, is never really looked as someone who goes far in the game, and it's unfortunate. So I did want to make sure to, pull it back a little bit, right? And I also actively tried every single time I had an idea out there. I was also physically doing it. Like, you'll see me moving the bamboo piece. You'll see me like tying the clothesline. I want to be as active as a participant as I am someone who is proposing ideas. I think it's really hard at the end of the day when you're starving out there and when you want to sleep on a nice shelter and you want to feel as good as you can, to sit back and say nothing or to just pretend like I don't know. I think, honestly, I personally would have been disappointed in myself if I just sat back. In the moment, I don't think I was being, or I didn't feel that I was being bossy or, too controlling. I've talked about it with Rachel. I don't think that any of my actions came off as like too strong. I think the way that the edit happened was a little bit more one-on-one, maybe me and Sam. Again, in real time, it felt like very brother-sister. Because in those moments after we had an argument with a clothesline, you kind of level set with each other afterwards and be like, hey, you know what? We're both hangry. Let's bring it down. But yeah, in terms of being a leader, I wanted to live nicely at camp. Like, that's as much as it is. And when you are hungry and when you are sleep deprived, it's just hard to sit back.
Well, something else that may not have helped that relationship as well is you go on this journey, and obviously a lot of information is exchanged, and you bring back this stuff as well from a cross-tribal perspective. And I know, certainly, I think Sam and Sierra had a bit of the ideas in their heads of like, it's mergatory, how are we being looked at, et cetera, et cetera. So talk to me about your perspective on that. And do you think that reflects upon their decision to get rid of you?
First of all, how unlucky was that journey for me? Jeff, give me a challenge or a puzzle or a task of some sort, please. But in terms of that, again, like, I had this core four alliance. And so when I came back to camp, I was warning them. Like, I was like, hey guys, we all four need to be aware of you two being targeted. Like, that's what the intention was when I came back and I told them. And I know for a fact we saw it. Like, though I think the way it got retold to Sam later in the game through Sue's mouth, through
Mm,
Kyle's, was really, it seemed a little bit more intense as I was gunning for them than what actually happened, right? So I think the Survivor's game of telephone really shot me in the foot, because in real time when they ask me if they're dating, I'm like, no, they're both engaged, and but they're just tight, like I don't think very hard in the moment of what I'm saying. I don't think it's ever going to come back to bite me. But I think Kyle did do. It was very interesting how he went back and wanted to twist that because he already had the perception in his head that Sam was running the camp. So, he asked the question. He wanted to be fed. I gave him the information, not knowing, and Survivor's game of telephone came back around.
there you go. Sort of a game of coconut phone. Last thing I want to, the last thing I want to ask is like, it's weird to say you were counting your chickens, considering that you traded them in, but like obviously you were already looking ahead to what was coming next, and like knowing you, I'm sure you had some ideas in mind as like who I want to work with, what's the plan moving forward, especially with Rachel and Sierra by your side. So talk to me about that. If you were to survive, you got your way, Andy was voted out. What were going to be your next steps moving forward when the game turned individual?
We talked about it so much out there and I felt so confident about it. We were referencing the Reba 4. We were like, we're 4 strong. We're going to go in. We're going to be that, the core 4 that sticks together as long as we can. And so that really was my plan. And then also when Rachel went on this last journey that we saw, or not the journey, but the reward challenge,
Mm.
she was setting up the groundwork for me, her, and Sierra to work with the 3 Tuku women as well. Because our perception was that Tiana, Sue, and Caroline were tight. And like that they would automatically want to do a women's alliance. And so Rachel, as you see, was asking the question last night, being like, "Hey guys, are we? I think how does she phrase it? Like, are we down to work with the women or something like that?" So she was setting those up for us too, because we had previously talked about it back at camp. Who do I want to work with?
Was your ideal endgame in all breadwinners final three, or were you looking to make some of those cuts down the line?
We it's funny. We dreamed about it and we talked about a breadwinners final 3. I think it would have been absolutely amazing and awesome. Obviously it's the game of survivors, so to predict that would be a little bit too cocky, I think. But we daydreamed about it. We were like, that would be so awesome. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that, we talked about daydreams, we talked about survivor nightmares when it came to all this, but like, I've said this to you before, I'll say it again to circle back to what you just told me of like getting to experience all that. I mean, you were unabashedly yourself and, you felt the love from it. And like, that shows, that you opened up your heart in that moment, and there were so many complex and complicated emotions involved because that's the game and that's the heartbreak of getting eliminated. And not only was it like incredibly entertaining, I think it had us feel for you in a huge way as well. And so thank you for providing that. Thank you for providing this the entire season. It was so lovely getting to chat with you as always and getting to watch you over the course of all this. I had such a great time getting to talk today.
Thank you so much for all of that, Mike. I truly appreciate it so
Of
much.
course. Yes. Well, all the best to you and yours. And I cannot wait to see what happens next with you, friend. Have a great one. Thanks again, Anika.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Bye.